Hello, welcome. It is snowing so beautifully here where I live in Philadelphia. It is just remarkable. So on this snowy day, I'm welcoming you to Creative Vitality Jam Sessions. Here we have intimate conversations with extraordinary dance and theater artists about reimagining creativity and supporting and building community. CVJS and I walk as allies and in solidarity for equality, justice, and respect. Black Lives Matter. And let's unite. It's also more fun. I'm Helen Pickett, and today's guest is Thomas McManus. Thomas McManus is a choreographer, assistant professor at USC, and a stager for William Forsythe. He's also one of my oldest and dearest friends. We have known each other since 1986. Welcome, Thomas.
Hello, everyone, and hello, Helen.
I am thrilled. I'm so happy to sit with you here today. Selfishly, these jam sessions are also about seeing my friends for 1 hour and talking and letting the world know how amazing you all are. Um, you're the fifth session of At Home with the Forsythe family. And I'm just thrilled to be sitting here with you. What part of the world are you in?
Right now, I'm in the town called Catskill in upstate New York. It's right on the Catskill Creek and the Hudson River. And most people know of the hill range or the mountain range called the Catskills, but this is actually a town called Catskill. And my husband and I have just bought a house here.
Oh, congratulations!
We're moving towards the end of March out here I've been living in California for the past 6 years. I moved there from Berlin and so we've just decided this past fall, during COVID, everybody's looking inside and feeling what's important for the next part of our journey together. What's for the next 10, 20 years, where do we want to be? How do we want to be? How do we want to structure our lives and everything? So we were both thinking, okay, there's friends, there's family out here. There is also some connections out there in California, but there's fewer connections out there than there are out here. So even though, after 6 years, I was just getting really acclimated to never below 72 degrees, just like that's cold. Okay, we're not going to discuss that. But now I'm going to brave the snow and ice once again.
Is it snowing there?
It flurries all day today, just flurry bits and pieces. Yeah.
Oh, it is. If it was rain here, it would be torrential. It is remarkable. It is so beautiful. And they're the big, thick snowflakes. It's really, really pretty on the inside in a warm apartment.
Next to the fire. Yeah.
Yeah. I am super excited you're going to be living in Catskill. It's not a very far drive from Philly. And I'm also going to be up at Catspan at the end of April and all of May. And there are going to be two, anyhow, we're going to be close. Yeah.
Well, we're going to visit then. Definitely.
Yeah, exactly.
I may be going to Paris. I'm going to the week after next, I'm going to be teaching for the Paris Conservatoire. Right. One of the Forsythe pieces called Enemy in the Figure, just a version of that. Online, I'm going to be teaching from California, but they have their performances at the beginning of May and they want to bring me over there to really set it on stage and get it up, and so we might take a couple of weeks or whatever and maybe do some traveling depending on COVID and everything, of course. But I'll be back here and I'll come down to Catspan and visit. I really wanted to see it. I've been so curious about that place, also about Stephen Petronio's place, which is probably just a 20-minute drive from here.
Yeah.
Here in Catskill, there's a place called the Lumber Yard, which was just getting going before COVID, and I'm hoping that will also start back up again.
Well, I'm really sorry you have to go to Paris. It's just terrible. Um, so, okay, great. So let's dig in. I want to start with, I loved this, one of the words you described yourself with. You described yourself as an explorer, and it just really hit me. It meant a lot. I understood it. I thought it was beautiful, perfect word. Can you explain in further detail about your exploring? Where? In what
Yeah.
environments?
Well, my family history is that I think on my mother's side, my fifth grade uncle would have been my fifth grade uncle was William Clark, who was the Lewis and Clark
No.
expedition of America, kind of, first white guys really mapping out everything west of the Mississippi. So that kind of exploring was part of the mythos of our heritage, and we were always proud to be associated with that. And my father was a postmaster. My mother was a teacher, a high school teacher. So, he was able to take time off in the summer, and she had time off too. So they would drive us around the country. And, back in the 60s and 70s, we didn't have a lot of money, but we could camp. And so we, all nine of us, I have six brothers and sisters, and then my parents, all nine of us would pile into just these normal sized cars. There wasn't even like a station wagon or anything. But we would, he was a postmaster, so he could pack everything just perfectly into the trunk. And we go out for like 2 or 3 weeks. And before the time I was 17 years old, I saw all of the lower 48 states. Yeah, I hadn't seen Alaska or Hawaii, but I'd seen every state on the continent. So it was pretty incredible education. And that gave me the desire to just get out in the world. So when I was 17, I left home and went to North Carolina School of the Arts, and the career kind of started, right there, boom, just going out and gypsy life right away. And that lasted until, well, about 6 years ago.
Well, yeah. I mean, so the funny thing is I think that, explorers like us, like many artists, can have a home base and still have that, because the heart is there. So, I mean, you were settled and in one place, right? And predominantly in one place, but it doesn't change the ethos, right? It
No,
just,
absolutely.
yeah.
And with Forsythe, once I found myself there and my family there, it was this like-minded thing. But of course, it was that inner exploration, that exploration through art, which is, of such a noble cause and such a noble endeavor, because it's the hardest. It's so much harder to find new things, explore yourself through art, rather than going out and exploring a new continent or something. I mean, it's hard. It's very hard, of course, but the artistic exploration is kind of, it can be furthered and explored with other people. And that was what we found in Frankfurt. We all supported each other's just going as far out as we could with our imaginations, and daring each other to find new things, really, physically or emotionally, or like you did so much acting for Forsythe. I did much less of that sort of thing, but I was much more into the physical exploration and finding the perimeter, finding where can we go with things.
Yeah, and you said support. Yes, I feel like the support was there. And also there was something about, I'm going to say a word that doesn't exist, but the okayness of all of us being in a place of unknown and, let's say, off center. So I talk a lot about as many Forsythe people do, about and how we further these ideas in ourselves, and what we took that meant a lot singularly that we also, then give out. But as a whole, there was this place where, I'm going to say it this way, and you're going to know what I mean. It's like, instead of the wrong and right of things, but there was a place where wrong was celebrated. I mean, because it wasn't wrong. There was an aesthetic that was so far greater than wrong and right.
Mhm.
And that is something that I think also you can, chime in about this. That kind of thing grows and can be celebrated vastly and way beyond the life that we're going to live, but you can live in that place. It's so fertile.
Mm-hmm.
There seems to be no end to that kind of mindset, and to pass that on, right, which is what you've been doing.
Yeah, definitely. Just allowing yourself to see the other side of a mistake.
Yeah.
So you're trying to do something, you're trying to do it correctly, and then you make a mistake. And so that doesn't fit in the category of this thing, but it is, if you look at it on a different way, on a different perspective or something, and you work it back into what was correct, it can add this wonderful note, this accent of perhaps, of course, if you are choreographing, right? Say we choreographed so much in the Forsythe milieu, but also outside and everything. But I find that I'm a very heady person, and sometimes I think myself through choreography and the act of choreographing a bit too much, and it can get a little hermetic in that way until I start to incorporate these mistakes, these things that come out of me, still me, but things that I didn't think through, things that I didn't preconceive perhaps, or something. And then that brings the depth of the work to a larger degree. It's like bringing something to it that I hadn't foreseen. And I love that part of the creative act. And I like that also because it makes me vulnerable, it makes the work vulnerable, and makes it therefore more accessible to people. And I think that was one of the greatest things with Forsythe, because he was extremely, and is still, just so verbose and so wonderfully educated. His reading materials have always been top level, and such a philosopher and all that. But he was also just such a dork. And he let that out, and it was very accessible.
I mean, let us let that out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's so true. It's so true. The fun of exploration. That was a big part of it. Like, this is tough work, but it's also fun, and the fun lets. I mean, his humor in his pieces. Come on.
Yeah. Well, the fun and the excitement of grappling with
the problem.
complex philosophical ideas in dance. Like, seriously, you're gonna tackle philosophy here? It's like, yeah, we could try, we can attempt.
Of course we can. One of my favorite quotes from Immanuel Kant, the German philosopher, is "Space is pure intuition." I found this quote early on when I retired in New York. I was, doing some reading, and this quote continues to baffle me in the most wonderful ways. And I can keep digging or folding back into it and being like, it's such a large idea. And I think that was also, part of the magic. There was a largeness in Frankfurt that could get away and have that place where, like, like, where do I start? It's like, it's a big idea. But then the parameters of the technique, right? Slingerland, we're going to work on arc and axis. We're putting our tennis shoes on with socks for the first time. We're going to work on these things. And so it's like the the modalities that came out of Lim's theorem, the modalities that led to Lim's theorem. These were parameters that helped like this giant idea get, you know, into this workable place. So then you could bust open the workable place again. So it's, I always thought it was like the cosmos and then the mini cosmos. So you could break out and get back into the cosmos.
Yeah. That's a good way to see it. Structure to break structure and to break free of structure, right? So not having a structure to start with is so difficult. It's like the blank canvas without any idea of where to go or how to start. So giving yourself a structure is like, okay, let's work on these things. You know, we were also sort of scientifically minded in that way. We needed, you know, to dot our I's and cross our T's and stuff like that, you know, but then yes, from there breaking out. So I don't know, you know, how, yeah, you just brought up the word intuition, love it. So taking that out of context a little bit, and for myself, growing up on a farm in the middle of Illinois, which is big sky country, my whole idea of art was so influenced by nature and how, you know, the wind blows and, you know, all that, the sky and everything. So when I started to think about becoming an artist, I thought, oh, I want to make art on a big scale. I want big art. I wanted art as big as the sky. And Forsythe really hit that. His pieces were just wide ranging, cross culture, you know, over boundaries, and just so inclusive, you know.
Yeah, way ahead of his time in so many ways.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is that he was also an incredible teacher. And
Oh,
I believe that is also why, and he was he cared, you know, he cared about what was happening in the company and the people. And I think that's why many of us have gone on to be creatives, but also good coaches, because
the teachers.
The humanity
Mm-hmm.
of seeing the individual and saying, so I'm not going to be general. I'm sure you have found this, but I have found one of the greatest challenges of being a coach and a teacher and coaching dancers. And I say great challenges in like, I really mean, like, I relish the chance to figure out how I'm going to change my words and my way with each individual, so they get to bloom in the way that's personal to them, not a general, you know,
Yeah, right.
back. What does that mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah, finding your way into that individual.
Yeah. And it's beautiful work. It's really gratifying. Okay, I'm going to talk about more about you, Tommy. Another evocative description of yours, a quote, it being your life, has been a lifetime of moving, and I hope it has helped. I love this. I mean, I just have to say, knowing you, you're one of the most caring, generous, inspiring people I've met in my life. So when I read, I hope it has helped, I thought, of course it's helped. But the idea of helping through movement, can you expand? I mean, we've talked a lot about it now, but can you expand on that? You say moving with others is your favorite.
Yeah.
It is the sharing. Is it the sharing, the feeling? Is it the community?
It is all those things for sure. And it's also, so in different realms, as being a teacher up in front of a class, it just helps me to get across the enormity of what I'm teaching. If I'm teaching some set choreography and all of the things that are, all of the associations that are glued to that, if I'm moving. right? If I'm really showing and I'm moving and I can show them what I mean in that sense. There's another realm, and that is, like I was saying, sharing with one person, dancing with one person, and in many different contexts, of course, on stage or off stage, in a club or wherever you dance, just that kind of connection is you can't underestimate it. It is so deep, and especially now after these months of COVID, not hugging people. I haven't hugged people. I hugged somebody yesterday, an old friend who is kind of, he's in a very specific bubble and I'm in a very specific bubble. So we felt like we could hug. And it was just like, wow, that's great. Of course, I have my husband, and that's fantastic. He's been my rock, and we have hugged all the way through this. Thank God he's a good hugger. But just that sort of interpersonal contact and dancing, when you're dancing with or without music, whatever, and you make that connection with another person, it is so deep and beyond words. So I love the fact of being able to elucidate and name things and take it apart completely in small pieces and write about dance. I love writing about dance. I love putting it into words. But there are some aspects of it that you just can't do that. Dance is not words. It's not theater. I mean, it is all those things. So sometimes it is certainly beyond words. And it's elemental for people to move. Okay, I won't say dance. Some people don't dance, or they don't think of themselves as dancing, but moving, yes. Everybody feels movement. Even if you're in a wheelchair, you feel something moving, your head or whatever, and it's so important. And the more and more important every day, because we're spending all of our lives on these computers. I've been teaching since March via Zoom, and it's okay. We've made it work. The students have made it work. They've had the patience. They've stuck with it. They're troopers, amazing. But there's a bit missing.
Of course there is.
Definitely.
The tactility of teaching is missing in dance.
Absolutely.
The fine detail that you cannot see through the screen.
I
know I've been choreographing on Zoom.
I haven't done that yet.
Yeah, and coaching and teaching, but it is like, but like you, I know you're an extremely positive person. I'm taking the positive. I'm learning from this. And I got to mentor way more people.
Yeah.
Which is also nice. So there's an anecdote to help. You gave me when I first joined Frankfurt, Thomas. You and I lived on the same floor in the same apartment building. We kept our doors open. Säumerstraße, exactly. And your kindness and friendship meant so much in those early days. We got up to so much fun together that I will leave out of this little conversation. But we did have our band together. We created a band. I don't know where I was going with that, Thomas, but I think I just had to talk about our life together. But here's a different question. You have choreographed. See, it's a total non sequitur what I was talking about. Sorry. You've choreographed 33 works between 1996 and 2019. How have you reimagined yourself within this period of time as a choreographer? How has your approach shifted? And what areas do you wish to discover?
That's I might not remember all three of those, but
I will remind you
through this. that was a really fruitful period. Of course, I had just left the Ballet Frankfurt, and I was, branching out into many different things, teaching and choreographing and dancing, um, and just, it was in on one hand, it's great to have to pay the rent, and I had, with art, I paid the rent um, from when I was like, I think 18 or 19 years old. I didn't have another job. I think before that, there was a period where I did have a restaurant job. And I was using that job to be able to do my art. But then I just started getting busy enough. And I was just lucky, oh my God, so much luck. Being in the right place at the right time. And so it was good to have that kind of motivation to take jobs, and sometimes kind of jobs of whatever it was going to be. So during that period, I did television commercials. I did a lot of operas and operettas. Nick Hoffner and I started our own company. There was all these different venues of where I was able to express my choreography, and the pieces that Nick Hoffner and I made were for stage and for screen. So there were a few different films that we made, and a few stage pieces that also incorporated film and or sort of delayed video sort of effects, that kind of thing. So it was multimedia stuff. And then during with the different operetta venues, there was all of these, especially in the operettas, there were all these different scenes that you had to kind of conform to. So I never thought of myself as much of a tap dancer, but I did study tap in New York when I was in Cats and stuff, and after kind of when I was Cats. And I really loved it. I loved tap dancing, but I never felt like I was very good at it. But I did have to choreograph a few numbers for some of those operettas, and I found that I was okay. I'm pretty good at that, actually, because I really loved finding the different rhythms and really incorporated some difficult steps. I did hula choreography. I choreographed a hula dance, so I had to research that. I really wanted to pay tribute to the real hula because I fell in love with it. It's beautiful, amazing, and strong, powerful dancing. And so I did that, and I did like a water ballet, and I mean, the range of stuff that you get asked to do in that sort of milieu is quite fun, really is. And I loved the research. I loved having to go into the libraries and find videos, and now you can find so much on YouTube, and that's fantastic. But back in those days, it was more about finding a dance library and really going and doing the research. So in those ways, I felt like I was pushing myself outside my personal boundaries, my comfort zones. Every project was outside of would at some point anyway get me outside of the comfort zones.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you kind of no, the last part of the question, I would love to talk about what areas would you like to discover?
I think these days, well, okay, so I have been for 6 years part of academic institution and being the professor. And during that period, I haven't really, well, there were a couple of small projects that I did during that time, kind of in school with graduate students or stuff like that. As a choreographer, but I haven't done something kind of for the general public. So now I'm out of that, and I'm on to my next phase of my career. And I taught a short mini course, a 3-week course about the history of dance in Germany in the 19th and 20th centuries. And through that, I really got this interest, again, a re-interest in Ausdruckstanz, expressionist dance. And so I would be interested to explore some of that for myself in my daily a routine. I'm renting. My husband and I are going to tomorrow. We're going to a wonderful space called Foreland here in Catskill, and we're wanting to rent a large space there that we're going to cut in half, and half of it is going to be his studio because he's a visual artist, and I'm going to have my dance studio. And so it's like 5-minute walk from home. And so I want to daily dance, I'm going to be doing that for myself. And I want to explore some of this expressionist dance. Okay. So I am in love with formalism and counterpoint and structure, wonderful, strong structures, but I also want to start to incorporate this sort of, what is my vocabulary outside of my classical and, Forsythian inspired, vocabulary.
Yeah, but Thomas, so I want to touch on that a bit, because I mean, Bill's the first one to say this. I mean, the company was also made of the individuals. And when I think of all the pieces that you are original, let's take Enemy. You just talked about it. When I think of you in that solo,
Enemy in the Figure.
In Enemy in the Figure, that's you. I mean, I knew you long enough as a dancer to recognize and see your identity and your thumbprint that also contributed to the Forsythe aesthetic. I mean, he's the first one to say that, that his company was also built from these extremely strong personalities that we all had, and every dancer has an identity, of how, because every person's an individual, we all have. So I have to say about you, I have to tell this story because it was early on and it so impressed me about you. We were in process. It might have been first act Czar, so really early. And I remember you had taken a nap under the piano, like at lunchtime or something. And then you were still kind of dozing as the rehearsal started. And I think might have been Eva Crossman Hecht, or it might have been Margot, so maybe it wasn't, it might have been third act. Maybe it was an artifact rehearsal. I don't know, but someone was on the piano. And I remember you kind of waking up. I was in the back of the studio and you kind of were watching, and Bill was creating. And this is the thing that blew me away, because I was watching you and watching him. I was always distracted somehow by everything around me. But you got up out of the piano and you got up and you did the exact choreography because you did to the T, and my mouth dropped. I was like, so I want to learn to do that.
Yeah.
And that's the example again of being so impressed, earlier in the conversation with our colleagues and what we learned and how we supported each other. But I feel like, going back in the studio, like you say, and finding your expression, I think it's there. I think it's so strong, Tommy, what you brought to the repertoire of, quintet. I mean, that's a later piece. Later, I left in '98, so a little bit later for me. But all the stuff that you were a part of, the improv and Same Old Story, Roger in Act One of Czar, the improv in Artifact, all the stuff I'm not mentioning, but even like watching you and Bye Bye and the early stuff. I mean, I could definitely pick out Thomas McManus in a crowd as far as identity.
Yeah. I mean, I think I just want to explore it as far as, working it into, and also what we were talking about before, language. I was reading Saburo Teshigawara was talking about his career and the shifts that he has done over such a long career. And he worked very closely with many, later after he worked with us in the early 90s, he shifted his focus a bit and he worked with many texts and in a very in depth with these things like plays, and I thought it would be quite interesting to use text and dance, how to do that. So we were watching a wonderful film last night called The Dig. And there were such an interesting moments of where the characters were having a conversation, and then, action would begin, and they would stop moving their mouths, but the dialogues would continue, and you wouldn't, it was such an interesting theatrical ploy, but I'd never really seen that before. And then later on, the dialogue would start up again with the actual actors speaking and stuff. But I love that dream moments of coming in and out. So dances really opens up to that sort of thing,
Yeah. You mentioned Saburo. I remember the two of us making that duet together, remember?
Yeah, sure.
Side duet.
I just loved working with Saburo. I used them a lot in my classes,
Me too. Like the clouds under the arms.
Yes.
Remember that image? I use it all the time.
And just his structure, inspired from Butoh, just saying, okay, this is what you're going to work on. You're going to work on broken glass. That's all you get. That's all you get. But from there, you're going to work on that for 20 minutes or an hour. You're just going to go and stay with that. Stay with broken glass. Don't go anywhere else. But just broken glass will take you everywhere. You don't need a lot of input. You just need to focus in and expand and explore again.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Your teaching and staging is trifold. Forsythe Improvisation Technologies at 24 academies and universities that you've taught.
Really?
Assistant professor at USC, which you've done for the past 6 years, I think you said. And as a stager for Forsythe Repertoire, setting Bill's work on 16 companies. Your impact, you impart a great deal of knowledge. In addition, you were one of the quickest dancers, I just told that story, in terms of picking up choreography and the feel of it, not just steps, that, because we all know that's, there's way more than steps and how you pick up. And in speed, you're extremely fast dancer I ever encountered. It wasn't just the pace at which you caught the movement, but also the precision of detail and the deciphering and the manifesting to make it your own. Do you have a technique? I think this might be important for younger dancers. Did you have a technique in as far as how you learned or picked up? And if you do, how do you impart that knowledge into your teaching and your staging? Have you created a way?
I have to say that I don't really feel like I created a way. I feel like I was born with a certain ability, and I may have helped that ability along and recognized that it was an important thing for me to have as a dance person, and or because I started out on stage. My stage life started out more in the acting realm. My mother was a high school English teacher, and she would direct the plays at the high school. And so I watched her work, as a 6-year-old, 8-year-old kid, just watching, oh, this is how this thing works, so. And I would see her move and I would see them move, that kind of communication. My life was always about movement. Growing up on a farm, it was from sun up to sundown. It was out there running around the forests and being physical all day. And then there was the work. We had to work in the garden. We had to work in the cornfields. We had to work on the farm itself. And economy of motion, economy of energy was important from a very early age. And that for a dancer, that is, get you through your freaking career, right? And so I don't know exactly how, but I was already thinking in physical terms of economy of motion. So if you can recognize a task, a physical task, and break it down into its elemental components and say, I don't need to do all of this stuff. I just need to do this, this, and this. And it works, right? So I think that was it just happened in my life circumstances. And it just added up to being able to be standing behind a choreographer. I remember very specifically, we were doing Sweet Charity. And this man who had been on Sweet Charity on Broadway was in this little high school production. It was fantastic to have this guy. And he was doing a new version of the choreography. And, we were all learning. And then there came a point where it was stuff that he had shown us. We were all doing stuff that he had shown us. And there came a point where he started to go on in the choreography. He was just, I think, thinking through it for himself. But I just went with him. We were just dancing and I was doing exactly what he was doing, even though he was making it up right then. So I feel like somehow I was able to recognize a body logic or a movement vector logic, like we talked about this in Forsythe a lot about vectors, energy vectors, what is possible, what is perhaps a logical outcome of this movement. Where is it going to go? Where is it possible? But what is the rise and fall of that weight kind of really suggests? So I feel like that started happening for me, and I recognize it as being really, really helpful, So
you pass this on as well as must be a part of your teaching, huh?
Yeah, I try to, and to do that, I say, because I was always very visual learner also, looking, really seeing what, like you say, detail, what is the detail and how do those details help? Right? Because again, body logic and weight shifts, those little details make it all, So I try to tell my students, stop dancing, just stop dancing for a moment and just watch, that especially not so much students in school, but the professionals in companies. Exactly. Sometimes I'm like, you guys, you have to just stop. Please don't do it again, because you're doing it and you're doing it in a certain body of logic that you understand, but this is going to be just outside of what you do understand. And I want
they're dancing in their habits.
Yes, I want you to understand this thing in a different way. So just watch this one more time and just see that there's a little bit more detail and different detail, So it's a conglomeration of different, how do you, again, like you were saying, how do you get into each individual dancer? How do you get them to see the details? So it's a one-on-one thing, and that's, I don't have a general rule, but one thing that I do tell them, and something that helped me with Forsythe, when we were creating ballets every day, right? I mean, just so much work. We would create, half-hour ballets in a day that we were supposed to remember the next day.
I know. Well, he didn't want us to, because he wanted to change it.
I know. But I would go home at night. As I was going to sleep, I would start thinking through it. And if I could think through it as I went to sleep, I could do it the next day. That was given. That's a really good stamp. I know that.
And they prove that now. They, I read a study about a basketball team that the coach had them lie on the floor and visualize their games, and then they'd get up and practice.
Yeah,
it works. I just heard something that I'm going to take. I'm gonna incorporate into when I coach. Something you said, which I just want to highlight again. You said, how does the detail help? It's not just about catching the detail. That phrase, at least for this human being, made a lot of sense. How does the detail help you?
It's part of the structure.
That's fantastic. That's a new way of me computing, and like, that's why, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about it in architecture, it's like, what's the dude down in Barcelona, wonderful architect back in the 19th century.
Gaudi.
His filigree, all of that wonderful crazy stuff is actually part of the structure, because in particular his Sagrada Familia, the wonderful, amazing cathedral, he, I don't know if you know this, he created this structure that was strings hanging from a structure with weights on the bottom. And that's how he created this, the shape and the structure of his whole cathedral. So when he turned it upside down, right side up, it was weight bearing. You know, how does gravity work? So all of those filigree wonderful things are actually structurally, you know, integral to the whole thing. So really beautiful way of making architecture. Yeah.
Beautiful. Let's see here. Just a little history about you. You had danced with ABT2, Finest Young, Urespar, in Cats, and with Anne-Marie D'Angelo before joining Ballet Frankfurt. How did your dance career before Frankfurt influence your 12 years in the company in Ballet Frankfurt? And we had a chance to do Isabel's dance together as Roxy and Ravi.
Yeah.
You have a magnificent voice. That I know for sure because I've heard it. You know, after doing Cats, so the first part of the question is, of course it did, but I just want to hear how your life before you got to Frankfurt Ballet, how it influenced you, and then why and how did you decide on Frankfurt? And that's why I brought up your voice, because I felt like, well, Broadway could have been a thing for you as well, you know, after Cats. And did Broadway ever call you again?
Well, okay, I'll start right there. Yes, I have thought about Broadway, and who knows? Who knows? Now that I'm living in New York, you know, I think I should probably start on you know, some community theater project first and just do that. But I would like to start singing again. I would love to get back into that. We'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. You want me to repeat some of the questions?
No, I'll just go back briefly. In New York, I went my last year of high school to the North Carolina Arts. My teacher in Illinois, right where I lived, said, you got to get out of Illinois, because right now, at this point, back in the 1979, it was, she was like, there's just no school that's really going to support you. So go to North Carolina. I went to North Carolina, amazing, wonderful school. I learned so much in just the 1 year that I was able to go after having danced for a year and a half. I went to New York and got into ABT2 as an apprentice to the company. You know, I wasn't even in the company, but they made a little place for me. You know, they paid me $60 a week, and they let me be, you know, kind of a student really, but it was fantastic. And you know, learning from Madame Peryaslavik, and you know, the real, watching Misha and Natalia Makarova in class, watching them work is just like, I was just, you know, eating it up. Just amazing stuff. And all the stars at that time, Martine Van Hamel and everyone, wonderful stuff. That was 1 year. And then being you know, right away out into the scene in New York, being a freelance dancer, finding Finest Young and his very specific way of alignment and the subtleties of that, and just really enjoying it. And at the same time, working with people like Philip Grosser, who had been with Martha Graham and Twyla Tharp, you know, and Uris Barr, Vicky Uris, and Jill Barr were an iteration of a Paul Taylor company, you know, a much more earthy, sort of rounded thing. I mean, more earthy than Taylor, but it was, you know, Vicky Uris was probably one of the founding members of the Taylor company. And so it was, you know, this wonderful mix of techniques that was adding together. And then unfortunately, the lady's name is lost in time. I worked with this kind of, you know, very off kilter lady down in the artist colony, West Beth. she had a studio, and she was in her 60s or something, and she was the old hippie sort of thing, and she was making a improv piece that she wanted to make, and I don't remember how I got in contact with her or whatever, but that was the first time that I really, dove into improv. And even though it was totally different and not codified like Forsythe, it was at least a moment for us to just let go and explore, start to explore. And so all of these little steps added up to me wanting to leave New York, and also being enamored with Twyla Tharp's work. I really was very interested to work with her, auditioned and got very close a couple of times, but it just didn't work out for us, between me and Twyla at that time. So I wanted to see what Europe was like, and working with Anne Marie D'Angelo, who danced in Bill Forsythe's company for 2 weeks, and then she broke her ankle. And so she never, she stayed there for a year, but she just watched pretty much everything. So she told me that there was something wonderful happening there. And I think she had done love songs in Joffrey, but she didn't get to work for Bill really much. But she told me it was happening there. And I just called him up and said, we're coming through on a tour, and come see the show. And that's the way it worked out. And it was just the place to be. It was.
It's funny how so many of our stories, so many people, how we got to Frankfurt, right?
Yeah.
I saw him making a piece in San Francisco Ballet.
Yeah.
Sat in the doorway. He saw me interested, invited me in, and then I approached him, and then he told me, that I had to audition in Europe. But it's so funny how so many of us, how we get there, how we got there, isn't it?
Yeah. From so many different directions. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really, there's a kismet to it, I believe. I really do. Yeah. Wow, Thomas, amazing. Let's see here. So what a wonderful creative life, right? How do you see these multiple reimaginings shaping your life at this point? How has your perspective of art making shifted over the years?
I don't know if it's shifted too much in a way. Was it from 1999, right when I left the Ballet Frankfurt, for like 10 or 15 years, I worked with Dimitris Kraniotis and Christine Kono in Paris. And we had our improvisation trio called Collective Ludwig. And it was named after the frog Ludwig, not Van Beethoven or anything like that. So it's just like, she had this little stuffed animal named Ludwig. It's like, let's call it Collective Ludwig. It's like, okay, whatever. And so we opened that up a few times for a public, so these were improvisational evenings, and very, just, I thought good solid work, but just not everybody's cup of tea. I don't think it could ever be financially viable or anything like that. But I really loved doing it. It was it was like going on a retreat for me. Those were my spiritual moments, So that's an important aspect of what I want to carry forwards in the future for myself. But also like art making itself. I'm just inspired by Forsythe, that wonderful balance of abstract art and very accessible ideas and impressions, and what can be presented to people that they can hold on to, but they can also challenge their imaginations to wrap around. I got married a year and a half ago, and almost 2 years ago. And, thanks to the generosity of my husband, I don't think I really have to think about paying the rent anymore. So that's a huge burden that is off my back. You know, we own our house here in Catskill, and that's going to be that way. And so now I don't know how artists fund things here in America so clearly yet. You know, I'm going to have to start getting used to writing grant proposals and all of that. But that's going to be my task, you know, and just see how that works. I know how it's done in Germany. I did it for so many years with Nick Hoffner and our company over there. But it'll be interesting to see, you know, what happens. There's so much dance happening here. There's a little dance festival here in Catskill also, I think, called the Hudson River Valley Dance Festival. So, and I think it was it only happened for like a couple of years before COVID started. So it's a new thing, but people are really wanting it to happen. So I'm hoping to, you know, be part of the scene up here as well.
Well, one of the great things, Thomas, is that as far as your community here in America, you have a greater infrastructure than you know. I mean, so much of your Forsythe's family are over here, and there's a lot of us on the East Coast. And you know, I have found our family to be very, very generous, and and because of the tradition of the improv tradition, we're all in. Like, so it's like you got a lot of family to also rely on.
Yeah, it's time to reconnect with, for me, a lot.
Exactly.
I feel like I've been under a rock a little bit out there in California, just because it's been like the work was kind of overwhelming. But real, I'm so proud of what, you know, Bill did and what I did and Jody Gates did out there. I'm so proud of that school. It was amazing, but it was overwhelming. So now I can get back out there, and I'm so happy that you're over at Jacob's Pillow. I taught there the summer before last. You know, they asked me out there to teach.
Oh, your name, yeah.
I was also out there with Ballet BC because when they had their week-long residency, I was teaching them also. So it was great to be there. I had never been there before, but I was there 2 times in the same summer, so that was just wonderful. And
it's an extraordinary community.
Yeah,
and you're so close now.
Yes. It's just a drive away.
Yeah. There's a lot of dance in your area, and there's a lot of us on this side of the country. So
yeah, and get back down into New York City and see some things down there. I haven't been there for years and years. I really just love it. So.
Yeah. So we're at the point in the interview where it's the 3 questions I ask everybody. You've shared so many wonderful memories, but do you have one? I know there are many. It's the caveat I always have to say. You have one favorite or impactful memory that you can tell us about?
Well, because we spoke a few times about words and dance and that sort of thing, I remember being in Tel Aviv in perhaps 1989, and Christina Burkle and I were asked to do a radio interview at this club. Like we were sitting in this club having beers or whatever, and this guy was interviewing us, and it was just really fun to talk about. This was really the first time that I had talked about Forsythe's work on record or whatever. And I just really enjoyed doing that. I just remember that moment of also Christine Berkler, who had danced with Bill as a dancer in Stuttgart and had been such an amazing ballerina. At that time, I think she had only 1 child then. I think later she was to have her 2nd child. But, and, you know, just hearing her as a German perspective and a person who had been a, you know, star in multiple companies, and the way she thought about it and the way I was seeing it as a fresh new face on the scene. And that was just a wonderful moment to be trusted, you know, from Bill, and just say, here, talk to these 2 people. They can explain what life is like at Frankfurt, and just really wonderful. But I mean, they're just, it's overwhelming, the experiences. I mean, isn't it? I just feel like every performance was unique and learning experience. And, you know.
You know what? Tony just sent me So I got to, I mean, besides Isabel's and all the great stuff that we got up to together, also dancing a lot together, you and I. Tony just sent me, it wasn't the original cast of this, Agnes Nolten Yus was, but of Garden 2. And it's a clip of you and I doing the duet.
Oh, beautiful.
And I had such a, like seeing that, I could feel the dance
Yeah.
on and in me again with you at
Uh-huh.
this moment. And it was, and then of course I started thinking about how much fun we had in Isabel's dance, all the stuff, you know, just it's so deep that time, right? It's, I mean, it's so like the friendships and the experience, it doesn't take much to recall or live with your friends again, you know,
Yeah.
like you said, and be in that place with the friends that you also experienced all that with.
Absolutely.
What insights, again, you know, you've given so much now, but do you have a specific insight about living a creative life that you can share?
Yeah, I'm not the wise old man that I wish I was, but I just feel like the what you can do on a daily level, what you can do, even if it's not being in a studio, even if it's just being around your apartment, being out in town, doing this and that, what can you, it's maybe not so much about creating dance every day. It's just recognizing dance every day, recognizing what your daily thing is and recognizing it as dance. Can you dance your way through doing the dishes? It's just like it's useful. That is a useful um, ability to have. So yes, going into the studio is fantastic, and working out and sweating and getting there and really being completely physical, really important, I think also. But just recognizing it and saying, okay, this is also dance. Okay, I'm 57 and I'm differently abled than I was when I was 32. And I will continue to be differently. I have a time in my life where my physicality is changing. So how am I going to take this forward? Okay, so I was telling you about Dimitri Kraniotis and Christine Kono. Christine Kono is 73, 74, and she just was dancing before COVID. She was dancing with Dance On, the company in Berlin. And they asked her on to be part of this, and I forget whose piece it was because they all have all these different choreographers come in. They made this piece, and then they did the premiere, and the reviews came out. They were all talking about Christine because she was like, "This woman is just incredible." It's like she's my idol. That's what I want to be able to do when I'm 74.
Is Dance On the company that Yoni San Martin is in?
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Another
Amancio was in
amazing.
it. Yeah, Amancio was in it. Christopher Roman was kind of in it and directing, but he's not anymore and stuff. So, and I think Madeline Ritter, I think she is directing the company now. So, but who knows with COVID, I don't know. Everything's up in the air. So,
And then the last question, important question, in supporting and building a more equitable dance community, what are some specific daily practices to be active with that
yeah.
we can be active with?
Yeah, I having come here to Catskill, and we have a couple of very, very old friends that live here, and they've been kind of walking around the town with us, and pointing out different little things, And I was also looking about the history of Catskill and stuff, and I think it's really important. When I was up in Ballet BC in Vancouver, Emily Molnar would always start every speech out acknowledging the native peoples that had been on the land and how we have inherited the land from them, or taken it. I don't know what wordage you need to say, but also just here in America, acknowledging that this Esopus, this land belonged to the Esopus people, and just saying that, okay, we're not the originators here, we are stewards, can we be stewards? How well can we be stewards of this land? Can we not screw it up like we have been doing for 200 years? We have to stop this madness. We have to say that, we have to acknowledge that it's a pretty fragile place. The crust, the thin crust of this planet. Elon Musk wants to take us to Mars. Okay, I'm all for it, but let's fix this too. Let's do it also. And just trying to uncover the hidden histories. Again, like this whole summer has been so eye-opening for me. Systemic racism is there, and I'm just scratching the surface of how it impacts everything in my life, but it's so rewarding to do that bit of work and to see it, to begin to see how it affects every little decision I make and how I talk to people, how I go into a restaurant and just expect to be served, or, whatever that sort of thing is, I really appreciate this eye-opening time and Black Lives Matter movement. I really appreciate. It's given me so much depth,
I believe they've been nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize.
I think they should get it. I think really they
I
should.
think they have been. I think I read that. I have to go back, but
I think you're right. I think I remember reading that too.
I mean, yeah, it's I hope they get it too. I hope they get it too. Started by women.
Oh yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Oh, Thomas, I'm so happy that you're going to be on this side of the coast. We can have more. Well, hopefully, soon we'll be able to be in each other's presence and give each other the longest, most wonderful hug.
Yes.
Thank you so much for today. I've respected and revered your honesty for as long as I've known you, and also your generosity and extremely beautiful, generous soul. I want to direct viewers to places they could find out more about you. Do you already have a website or an Instagram handle? Can they find out more about you at the USC website? I mean, where can they find out about you?
The website on USC. Also, USC has a YouTube channel, so I'm on there a bit. I don't have my own website yet. I'm gonna have to start in on that now to put that all together. So yeah, there's just a little bit about me. I've kept a little private on the internet opening, so I'll have to get that out there soon.
Okay. So in the description box below this video, which will come up, you will have a short bio from Thomas, so you'll learn a little bit about him there. We have new guests every week. Our next interview will feature Christian von Howard, director of the Von Howard Project and associate professor at Montclair University, where I will be starting on Monday with those students. So now it's time of thanks. Gracie Spina, thank you so much for your work on CVJS. Thanks to our beautiful dance community, which has upheld us, supported us, given us so much all these years. And Tommy, my dear friend, thank you so much for this beautiful talk.
It's great to be with you. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. And hope to see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.